Hello and welcome to Learning AutoCAD Civil 3D by Infinite Skills. My name is Seth Cohen and welcome to the course. In this video, we will answer the question, what is Civil 3D? So, what is Civil 3D? AutoCAD Civil 3D is a powerful civil engineering tool that creates smart relationships between design objects so design changes are dynamically updated. With this dynamic technology, everything from surfaces, alignments to corridors will be updated automatically based upon the relationships with their other objects. For instance, I have two model space viewports open. Let's go ahead and zoom into the profile view over here. And on the other viewport, let's zoom into this alignment. Let's go ahead and just select this alignment. Notice how you get a nice cool set of grips. And let's go ahead and move this horizontal alignment. Watch what happens to the profile view above. Notice how the existing grade line is changed automatically. This is because there is a relationship between this horizontal alignment, the profile view, and the grade that falls across the horizontal alignment. Also notice that the corridor model that we have created here is showing the links, but the corridor model is not updated. Let's go ahead and expand this here in the corridor section. Notice how it's telling us it needs to be rebuilt. Right-click, rebuild, and watch the corridor model automatically update and daylight to the appropriate locations. Let's look at another example of this. Let's take the top view and zoom into a cross-section, or a section view as it's called in Civil 3D, in this view here. Let's go ahead and zoom into the sample line that is actually used to project this cross-section across this section view. If I select the sample view, simply pick one of the grips and move it across the alignment, watch what happens to the cross-section view. It automatically shows you what exactly is happening across that area of the corridor model. So what is Civil 3D? Civil 3D is a very powerful and dynamic civil engineering tool that can be used in transportation, land development, and water projects. In this video, we will discuss Civil 3D workspaces. Civil 3D ships with predefined workspaces that help you use Civil 3D more effectively. To switch between workspaces, navigate to the Workspace switching icon in the lower right part of the AutoCAD Civil 3D application window. There are four workspaces that ship with Civil 3D. You have Civil 3D, which of course will contain all the most commonly used Civil 3D tools. You have Drafting, Annotation, and 3D Modeling, which are the standard AutoCAD workspaces. And lastly, you have Planning Analysis, which is basically the Map 3D functionality in Civil 3D. If you're not familiar with workspaces, a workspace is a stored configuration of interface components. In other words, where your tool space is, what ribbon tabs you have open, where your command line is located, where the properties palette is, the tool palettes, etc. It is recommended to start out with the Civil 3D workspace and then do a Save Current As. Then give it a name, something like your initials -C3D or something like that, and then click Save. This way, if you make any changes to the workspace and somehow they get lost or something messes up, you can always revert back to the original Civil 3D workspace and not have to worry about reinstalling Civil 3D. One of the other things to note is your workspace settings. Let's click on the workspace switching icon and navigate to the workspace settings location. By default, do not save changes to workspace is switched on. You want to make sure you set this to automatically save workspace changes. That way, if you, let's say, you move a tool palette around or add a toolbar to your interface, if you have this set to do not save changes, your changes will not be saved and Civil 3D will revert back to the original workspace. Setting it to automatically save workspace changes guarantees that your changes will be made as you make them. In this video, we will discuss the Civil 3D ribbon. The ribbon is a standard Microsoft interface that Autodesk adopted in 2009. However, Civil 3D started using it in 2010 as the main interface to all the Civil 3D tools. A ribbon is made up of ribbon tabs, such as the Home tab, Insert tab, and so on. And inside each of the tabs are ribbon panels. So for instance, if I were to say, navigate to the Home tab, Create Design Panel, Alignment drop-down tools, this is where you would go. So for those of you not familiar with the ribbon is a task-based interface. It basically poses the question, what do you want to do? And then the ribbon, tabs, and panels will answer that question. The only exception to that question is the Home tab, which contains the most commonly used tools. So let's look at an example of this. Let's say I want to plot something. So let's look at the tabs and think about how you would plot using the tab categories. Is plotting an insert operation? Definitely not. Annotate? I don't think so. Modify? Analyze? View? Ooh, let's check that out. Do I see a plot panel anywhere? And the answer is no. Manage? Definitely not. Output? Oh, hey, look at that. Let's look at the Output tab. And there's the plot panel. So plotting is an output operation. And that's how you have to look at the ribbon interface. Let's look at one of the other things that the ribbon actually does for you as well. With Civil 3D, the ribbon becomes a context-sensitive ribbon. In other words, if I were to select, let's say, this alignment, look at the ribbon, you get alignment-specific tools. What's also nice about this functionality is it actually reports to you the actual name of the object type. Let's look at another example. If I press Escape here and select this surface, you'll notice it says tin surface : EG. So the name of this surface is EG, which of course stands for existing ground. You will then see all the commonly used tools for dealing with surfaces, such as adding data, editing surfaces, and so on. In this video, we will discuss the Toolspace Prospector tab. The Toolspace window or palette is where the Prospector, Settings, Survey, and Toolbox tabs reside. The Prospector tab is where you manage the Civil 3D design objects that are in your drawing. While going through this video, it is important to note the way that each category in the Prospector tab works. Each category and subcategory has context-sensitive right-click menus that make the creation, editing, and viewing of that data much easier. Let's look at an example of this. Let's go ahead and expand the Surfaces category, and notice that we have an existing ground surface called EG in here. If you keep expanding, you'll notice the subcategories that make up this surface definition. If we expand the Definitions category and select the break lines collection, you'll notice we have two sets of break lines that were brought into this surface. Again, because this is Civil 3D, these break lines are probably objects in the file, and they're dynamically linked to the surface. If you edit any of the objects in the file, the surface will update automatically. If we select one more into the break lines category, you'll notice that these are the actual break lines that were brought in. If you right-click on a category, you'll notice the option to do things like add. Or if we right-click on, let's say, the actual surfaces collection, you'll notice the option to create surfaces from different types of data. If you toggle on the global preview option and then select an actual surface, you'll be able to see a preview of that surface in the preview pane. Again, this is pretty cool. You can actually rotate the view and see this in 3D. If you're not seeing that surface or any other sub-object, simply right-click on the actual data type and click on Show Preview. Let's look at another example of some objects that are in our file. If we expand the Alignments category, Centerline Alignments, we have an existing alignment here. One of the other really great things that you can do is if, let's say, an object is not displayed, you can actually select the object. That way you can make edits to it from the contextual ribbon. Simply right-click and choose Select, and this will allow you to select that object, and then you can see in the contextual ribbon, you can actually make changes. If we keep expanding, you'll notice we have a Profiles category because profiles are children of alignments. We also have the Profile View, which is also in here, as well as a sample line. Civil 3D also provides icons that enhance your design session by giving you kind of quick visual feedback. For instance, you can see we have this little orange shortcut icon. This is telling you that this object is being used somewhere in the drawing. In this case, it's being used by this profile, as well as this profile, and it's also being used in the profile view. If we were to delete these objects, this icon would then go away, allowing us to delete it if we wanted to. In this video, we will discuss the Toolspace Settings tab. Civil 3D uses styles and settings to automate CAD standards and design settings within the Civil 3D environment. Civil 3D styles and settings are probably the most important aspect of Civil 3D. Having styles and settings defined before using Civil 3D in production will make it easier for you to use it within your organization. The way Civil 3D works is that styles and settings are stored in a drawing template, and this makes it very easy for you to maintain your CAD standards or use Civil 3D with another client's standards. There are two types of styles in the world of Civil 3D. We have object styles and label styles. So let's navigate to the Settings tab. And let's go ahead and just look at an example object style. Firstly, let's discuss how to navigate the Settings tab. It's pretty simple. Simply find the category of object that you want to work with, and you will see subcategories based upon the object type that you are selecting. Let's navigate to the Surface category. Let's say I want to navigate a surface style. We'll go ahead and expand it here, and let's go ahead and look at the Contour 1 and 5 background style. I'll go ahead and either right-click and click Edit, or you can double-click it as well, and that will open up the Style dialog box. Every type of object has a different set of tabs. This, of course, makes sense because based upon the object type that you are editing, you're not necessarily going to see the same exact tab. For an alignment style, you're not going to see contours and grid and points. So let's start with the Information tab. This is the name and the description that is given to the style. The Borders tab explains the actual borders of this type of style, and so on. You can click each of the different tabs to actually see what each setting contains. The common tab between all of them is the Display tab. So the Display tab is very important as it will tell Civil 3D which subcomponents of the actual object should get displayed and what layer they are on. One thing to mention with this Display tab: make sure you navigate the View Direction dropdown to edit all different view directions. Most styles will have at least a plan and a model. Some will have plan, model, section, and even a profile view. These tell Civil 3D how to display the object in each of these different views. To edit any of these categories, simply click on them and navigate the layer that you would like to change. Let's look at label styles. Let's say I want to look at a contour label, so I'll expand the label styles category and then expand contour. And these are all the contour label styles in this drawing. Let's go ahead and look at existing major labels. So one of the things about label styles is that once you remember the two dialog boxes used to edit label styles, it's the same for all label styles. We first have the Label Style Composer, which contains tabs to define the layer and object behavior. The Layout tab contains the actual components that will be used to display the actual label. And every label style will have a drag state as well that allows you to define how the label should react when you click on it and pick the grip to drag it around. The other dialog box you need to be aware of is the Text Component Editor. To access it, you will go into a specific component name, click in here, and then click this button right there. So as I said, these two dialog boxes are exactly the same for every single label style. The only unique property, depending on the label style that you go in and edit, is the Properties dropdown. So if I edit this one, notice how we're only seeing 3 because this is a surface type label. So you can get the name of the surface, the description, or the surface elevation. If we had chosen a pipe label style, you would see a whole category and list of different properties related to the pipe objects, such as invert elevations, rim elevations, and so on. One thing to mention about the Text Component Editor is that this is actually a text editor. I can actually type in text here as well. Let's talk about the settings related to Civil 3D. The settings in Civil 3D are a hierarchical type setting. In other words, there are 3 levels of settings, and they start from the top and then go down into each of the different object types as well as the commands. Firstly, we have drawing settings. If you right-click on the drawing file, you can click on drawing settings. If you then right-click on a specific feature, you will see feature settings. Again, these settings will first grab the ones above, and then you can override them with the feature settings. Lastly, you have something called command settings. Each specific Civil 3D command can actually override any of the settings defined above. Let's look at the drawing settings. We'll right-click on here and click on Drawing Settings. There are 5 tabs here. We have the Units and Zone tab, the Transformation tab, the Object Layers tab, Abbreviations, and Ambient Settings tab. Let's just give a brief description of each of these. Firstly, the Units and Zone tab is where you define the angular units, the drawing scale, and the coordinate system of the actual drawing. If you note right here, Civil 3D is built on top of the Map 3D coordinate system, and you have all of the coordinate systems in the entire world. If you do define a coordinate system to a drawing, you can then apply transformation settings. The Object Layers tab is a very important tab to be aware of. Civil 3D treats Civil 3D objects like a block. Just like an AutoCAD block goes on a layer, Civil 3D objects go on a layer. Then the style tells Civil 3D how to display the subcomponents and what layer those subcomponents should go on. There is some really cool functionality that you can leverage here by simply defining a layer and then using a modifier like --, which will actually act as a modifier in that whatever you give the name of the object, it'll append or prepend, depending on what you choose here, the name of that object to the layer that you select here. This makes it very easy to use the layer freeze command. If you use layer freeze and you think you're going to freeze a subcomponent, such as a tangent or an actual contour label, you cannot do that. You'd actually have to go to the layer dropdown and freeze or thaw it there. The abbreviations tab is used for geometric points. In other words, how do you like to say point of beginning? Is it POB, BP, end of alignment, etc.? And then the ambient settings are basically the design settings, such as if you were to measure a distance using Civil 3D, what's the accuracy that you want? Notice this option right here. This is telling you that there's an override down below. In other words, either in a feature setting somewhere in here or a command setting as well. You're going to see a lot of these because each individual object type you may want to actually override. Then if we right-click on any of the features, if you go to the feature settings, you'll see that these are feature-specific settings here, or properties, that you can actually then define here. Notice how this too is telling you it's being overridden somewhere down the line. In other words, a command setting is actually overriding the default marker style to use. You can change the settings here as well to override the drawing settings. And then lastly, of course, every command actually has the ability to override all of the settings defined above here. So if you look at the command settings, you can define the default styles and default contour labeling and surface defaults, but these icons here tell you these are command-specific settings that you may want to define. In other words, if you actually want to have a default name that comes up every time, you could click on the surface name template and then change that default name. Let's look at the label style defaults. So again, each label style does have its own settings, but if you want to change, let's say, the entire drawing's default text style to, let's say, a common one, you could right-click on here, click on Edit Label Style Defaults. You can then override any of the settings down below here. If we click on Label, I can actually change this to a specific label style. Let's say we change it to this one here, click OK. And then to actually override every single one, I simply click on this, and it will override every single one of those label styles to use this text style. That's a nice way to kind of get you started, and then you can go into each individual label style and change their specific text style or height or layer, etc. Lastly, let's talk about importing and purging out styles. If you go to the Manage tab of the ribbon, Styles panel, we have the Import Styles command as well as the Purge Styles command. By clicking this here, let's go ahead and first save our drawing. When you click on the Import Styles command, you then navigate to a specific drawing, and you can then bring in any of the styles that are inside that drawing. You can pick a drawing template or a DWG file. What's great about this functionality is you can actually either override styles that have the same name in this drawing, thereby forcing your drawing to use a specific set of standards, or you can toggle on and off the different ones that may or may not conflict.